What's up, guys? It's Arsenal Garage, and I know it's been a little sec, but today we've got something fun going on. Well, technically it's gonna be tomorrow, but we have a 2013 Subaru Legacy, and this Legacy is in for a 2-inch lift kit. So it's a little dirty. They just drove down a little ways. So let's show you about our lift kit right now. So we got an ADF lift kit, so Anderson Design Fabrication. And they specialize in Subaru lift kits, as you can see. We've got some great stuff. There's our website and everything like that right there. It's decently priced, you know, it's nothing absurd. So I'm just going to go over this real quick tonight, and then tomorrow we're going to be tearing into this and getting it all set up. So I'll give you a quick overview. So for the front, it's pretty similar to leveling a truck in the front. And basically, you are going to disassemble the front suspension. You're going to loosen up the control arm, take off the sway bar, pull out the strut, etc. And we are going to install the spacer. So this is the left one, so the driver's side, and this is the right one, the passenger side. Now, as you can see, which is kind of neat, is they're slightly offset to one side, which is to help with the camber and caster and alignment. So that's actually a pretty neat factor in there. These suckers are beefy. They're probably in a 3/16 quarter. They feel pretty solid. So that's the front. That's basically it. And it's going to need a 4-wheel alignment, of course. You're going to mess with it. You're going to have to loosen the camber adjustment bolts, but this is the essentials of it, which is pretty cool. So the front's the easy part. So the rear is the next part. So on the rear, we've got strut spacers again. These ones are not offset because they don't need to be with the way it is set up, but we are going to be dropping the subframe. So these ones right here are subframe spacers. So those are just going to be stacked on. See, there's 2 in this one and 2 in that one. So it's got 4 subframe mounting points, if I remember right. And I will have to double check, but if I remember right, these are the support bracket something or others. I will confirm that later on in the video. But those are also key component, and these are another spacer. Basically, we've got all the spacers set up through the rear. I will go in depth over which spacer is which tomorrow when I have it all taken apart. All of our hardware bagged. So far, I wish they labeled them a little bit better, but I will figure it all out. And then we've got our new subframe bolts. So the cool thing is these are actually genuine Subaru bolts. So I don't know what model they're off of. Maybe someone can tell me. So, but these are to replace the other subframe bolts. I'm assuming they're longer in order to compensate for the lift. So, all in all, I mean, the packaging and everything looks really nice. I like how it's presented. They give you some cool stickers. So yeah, so tomorrow we are just going to be tearing into it. The front will be first, and then we're going to do the rear. Good morning for me. Hello to you guys. It's the next day. It's morning, so it's time to get started on this thing. It's cold. First things first is we're going to get into the front ones. Front will get push right out of the way. Yeah, so we're going to jack up the car, take off the wheels, and get into it from there. We'll see what we're working with here. We're going to be installing our spacers. As you can see, they go right there on the top of the hats. So, well, like I said, so we'll jack it up, get the wheel off, and get into it. Alright, so we got the tarp on the jack and the jack stands. Both sides, wheels are off. So, this is basically what we're looking at right here. So what we're going to do here is we're going to probably we're going to disconnect the sway bar right here, which is a 17mm nut, I believe. And so we're just going to pull that off, and then after that we're going to disconnect the clips for the brake line and for the ABS sensor. This is the ABS sensor, this is brake line. Then we've got 2 19mm bolts for the shock. We're going to undo that and then slowly lower down the control arm. And then up here we've got 3 what looks to be like 12 14mm nuts. Confirm that. So first things first, we'll take off the sway bar and those clips, and we'll go at it from there. So we just ran into a quick little issue here with the sway bar end links, actually. So the annoying part is they can pivot, right? They're not locked in place. I was able to break them loose with the impact, and then they actually, I don't know if you can see it, let me grab my light, have Allen ends in the end of them, and you're supposed to insert an Allen wrench, and then you have your 17mm wrench on the outside to break them loose. So the issue with that is they're so stuck on, and I soaked them with PB Blaster. Maybe I didn't wait long enough, but it's stripped out the Allen key. Okay, so while I figure out the sway bar thing, I figured I'd see, maybe I don't even have to unhook the sway bar, which would save you guys problems from stuff like this. So we're going to try that real quick. Just pulled out the whole strut assembly. Real easy. Things are kind of stuck in. Like I said, you got the two 19mm bolts there. 3 12s up front. You got a 12mm bolt that holds on the brake line. Then you squeeze that clip right there to take it off. Okay, so figured it out. In order to install it without removing the sway bars, you just got to drop the other side as well, because then the sway bar is not holding up one side or the other. So it's pretty, I don't know why I didn't think of that earlier. I am going to be replacing that sway bar end link. I think I'm just going to have to cut it off because I can't get it to come off. So we got a new one on its way, so I will be replacing that. But in the meantime, there was I'm really not that impressed with the instructions, right? So the instructions are pretty vague from their website, but on the instructions, right, it tells you there's an arrow. There's no arrow on this face anywhere to point it forward. So luckily, by reading around online, I found that basically you're just supposed to have an ADF where it reads forward. So when you're looking at the engine bay, it reads forward. So that's pretty simple. It just took me a little while to figure it out. I wish it would just say that or something like that. But see, this is the right one right here. So you also put this towards the front. So that solves that. So on this side, just got to undo those 12s, drop it down, install the spacer, reinstall it. I am using Loctite on everything on this car, just to make sure it's all going to be torqued down properly. But it's pretty easy on that side, so now that we've got it sorted out, so now we're going to do this side. I did have to, I don't know if it's still hot or not, a little warm. But you have to see, I did end up having to cut off the freaking end link, so don't bother trying to unbolt the end links. Just do both at the same time. You don't have to mess with it. Not worth it. It's like another 30 bucks for me to go get a new end link, and I gotta wait for it to get into the nearest one. So kind of frustrating, but it is what it is. I really wish the instructions were better. That's my only complaint so far, is the instructions online that you download are not that great. So hopefully anybody who's installing it, this can help. But this is all torqued down. Loctited. It just used blue Loctite on everything that needed it. So these two bolts and all of those bolts up there. Also, when you guys are doing this, I guess I should have said this earlier, but unless when you drop this, just try not to pull this out too far, because the last thing you want to do is unseat your CV axle joints. But these are all tightened down by hand, zipping down with the impact. It's a nice finish though. Cool that you can see the ADF logo there. I like that, I do. So now it's time to, I'm going to get the front wheels reinstalled as soon as I get a new end link. I'm not going to bother showing you guys that because it doesn't really matter. So a new end link, then I'll show it down, set it down, and we'll see the front lift, and then we'll start on the rear. Alright, so we just finished this. Bolting the wheels on. You can tell it's definitely needing alignment, but we're just going to set it down here and see how she looks. Let's see how it looks. Oh yeah. You can tell already. So, as you can see, the front is a good deal higher than the rear. And it will settle a little bit more. But definitely looks taller. Definitely needs an alignment. Looks like it's got a little more positive camber now, which isn't too surprising. Well, maybe not a ton, but either way, it's pretty exciting. So, now it's time to jack up the rear and see what we're going to do about that. Alright, so figured I'd go over the rear suspension a bit better. I've got it all sorted out now, kind of figured out. So these are obviously the strut spacers, same sort of idea. Although they don't matter which side, they're not offset or anything like that. So, those are easy. These ones are the ones I was confused about a little bit, but these are the subframe brace spacers. So on the front of it, which I'll show you guys in a little bit, they have a little brace that runs forward from the subframe. This just gets spaced underneath. You've got your 4 main bolt to the chassis and to the body spacers. Aluminum, I'm thinking, really nice quality foam. These are your new 4 bolts. And then you've also got these connectors that go in the rear. I can't remember what they called them. I will show you where they go. They go in the very back. I think this is hardware for the subframe spacer. That would make sense. Subframe spacer. Or trailing. Yeah, so these I think are brake cable relocation brackets. Pretty sure. So all in all, it's actually fairly simple. It doesn't sound too bad. So I'm just going to get under there. I'm going to unbolt the wheels for easier lighting. Get a light under there, and we're going to see what we can do. Quick thing, I realize these might be for a rearward cross brace. I'm going to have to confirm that. If it is, then this is the last you'll see of them, because it doesn't have one. It only came on the WRX and Turbo models. Because this house works with Imprezas, not just Legacies. So, good chance I don't need those. I'm going to double check on that. Okay, so got the wheels off. I'm just going to show you guys real quick. So you'll want to unconnect your brake line right here. And then this is an ABS sensor, I believe, as well. Line. And basically, that has a 12mm bolt. Just break that loose. I put it back in. And this just pops, I don't know, off. It's a rubber bushing, just pops on in and out. So real simple. And also, so I'm not done with this yet, but you'll want to probably disconnect it. Got another one back here, so that way you get the most play with it, because the last thing you want to do is tear one of these because they're expensive. So take that off completely, both sides. Okay, so the next step is we're going to disconnect the lower shock bolt and the lower sway bar or bolt. Now you could unconnect the sway bar from the link itself. But I don't want to do that again, like a repeat of the front. So, and it actually, besides being dirty on the outside, the bushings look fine. So we're just going to unbolt it. I believe that one's a 14mm bolt and then a 17mm bolt. So those two right there. Okay, so now that we got both of these unbolted on both sides, you can see all the 4 bolts are out and the sway bar's unhooked, the brake lines are unhooked. What we're going to do next is we're going to undo the front brace. So the front brace is the rectangular spacers, which goes to those 2 bolts right there. So you can see that it just runs back, connects right there to the subframe, or it bolts to the body, one of the main bolts. So we do need to, so we're just going to unbolt those 4 bolts. I believe they're 14s. Bolts for the subframe brace are disconnected. We're ready to drop the subframe. So I'm going to take my floor jack. I'm going to put it on the pumpkin, differential, whichever you want to call it. Try to center it up so all the weight is rather balanced. And I did unhook also the exhaust hanger, just the rubber bushing part. Used a pry bar, popped it off real quick. It's a little bit close than I'd like, but I think we'll be alright. We should have enough clearance, otherwise I'll just unbolt it. So I'm going to undo the 4 bolts and slowly lower it down just enough to try to get those spacers in. Dropped through your subframe a little bit, didn't take much. Right now I was just checking spacer clearance, that's all good. You can see there's the front brace, that hole comes down with it. We've got our new bolts, which are longer. And so we're just going to throw the spacers in each side, all 4. Put the bolts through, tighten them up. And before we tighten it all the way though, I'm going to pull out the struts and I'll install those spacers, because that should be easier to do. So I'm going to throw in those spacers and I'll show you that when it's done. Right, go ahead.
See, your camera does.
So what we did real quick, so we got all 4 bolts in the subframe. They're just loosely in, they're not tight and just enough to hold it there. That was actually really wasn't too bad. So the next part is, I'm going to try to do without pulling up all this fabric. As you can see, maybe, is we've got the 2 bolts for the struts on either side of this. They're 14mm, so I'm going in with my ratcheting wrench. If you want to, you could pull out these panels. We'll see how hard it is, but I think I'm just going to do it without it. And that'll drop out our whole strut shock assembly so we can install the spacers on top. So we're just going to do that real quick. Like I said, these bolts are in to hold it in place. Getting these 3 struts out can be a little bit tricky. Putting some weight on them, get them out. So I'll just show you real quick what that spacer is going to look like. And again, same as the front, we're going to torque it down tight, use blue Loctite, make sure nothing comes loose. So, here's your strut spacer. That's going to sit like so. Just pop the spacer on. Now it doesn't matter which way they go, they're not directional. It is just spacing it out. So, you can see. So we're going to grab the Loctite, the nuts, we're going to torque it down, make sure it's all good to go, stuff this back in, tighten up the top nuts on it. So then we will then go back and tighten up the 4 main bolts for the subframe.
This is already lifted.
The front was more of a pain actually, and then one of the instructions really aren't that great. It's kind of annoying, but part of the annoying part about it in the front is it tells you to undo the sway bar end links to do it. What are you doing? So this is kind of the tricky part, is getting it reinstalled. As you can see, you kind of got to figure out how to work it in there. I think this is why you kind of want to do it before you have the subframe installed all the way. I might have to have someone stand on it actually, which would mean pausing the video and then we'll just show you after. Just had my brother help out. He stood on the hub. It's kind of tricky. You put this part down in the arm first, the control arm, and I used a pry bar while he stood on it. So now it's just a matter of lining up the holes to get it to go in, which is easier said than done. Probably just gonna use the pry bar again here. See if we can't line it up. So close. And there it goes. Boom. So now we just put the nuts on the top, same process. You guys don't really need to see that. And then we'll just put the bolts back in the bottom. We're not going to bolt this one in just yet. Go do the same thing to the other side. Then we'll bolt up the subframe, and the shocks, sway bars, front control brackets, brake line braces. We'll show you all that. Got the shocks in both sides. So we're just going to go ahead and step on down here. Take our handy dandy impact. Jack up the floor jack a little bit. Tighten up our subframe bolts. On the front ones, make sure you keep your upper brace lined up. And we're not going to tighten the front ones quite as much, because we still do need to install our rear upper braces. But we can still snug them up. Tighten up the rear ones, snug up that same one, and that's it. These are our front subframe brace connector spacer right here. It's like a 2x2 square tube. Now I've already installed this side. It's really simple, really easy. I Loctited it all. It comes with a washer and a lock washer. So I'm going to still torque them down, but they're in there for now, which means I can go through and now do the other side. Then we're going to go through and do the final tightening and torquing of all the subframe bolts and reattach everything. Alright, so everything is basically reinstalled. All the bolts to the struts, to the sway bar. Everything's been torqued, Loctited. Right now I'm just in the process of putting on these brake perch extenders So real simple, you just use the existing 12mm bolt, and it comes with a 13mm bolt and nut. You just use to fasten it on, clip those back in place, and that's pretty much it. So we are ready to put the wheel back on this side, and that's pretty exciting stuff to see. Just sitting on the ground, and now it's still going to settle a little bit. We're going to take it out for a test drive real quick, just see how it all feels. If everything feels good, then I'm going to go ahead and go deliver it back to the owner. Okay, so we'll do just a quick walk around. Looks really good from the outside. It's got plenty of ground clearance. I mean, look at that. It looks great. Does awesome, feels solid. Drove up this no problem. I mean, you probably can't tell, but it's actually fairly steep and does great. It's awesome, so pretty happy with it. Alright guys, so it's obviously a different day, probably can tell, but Subaru's done, it's on, it's dropped off. I wish I had more pictures of after. I could post one up right here. But it came out great. It looked really good, it drove nice, it didn't change the way the suspension felt, all the geometry stuff felt good, no weird handling habits. So overall, I liked the kit a lot. The quality seemed really good. It came with everything you needed. It had all the bolts, all the hardware, which I appreciated, because I hate tracking down pieces. So that was nice. I didn't like the instructions. Obviously, I think I made that clear. They sucked. You can figure out what you're doing from them and how to go about it, but they're just not very clear, and they're made for a couple of different models, so sometimes it's a little confusing. But overall, like I said, kit was great. I recommend it. Install really wasn't too hard. Hardest part was the stupid sway bar end link I broke, which was on me. And that, it was rusted, it was old. It was kind of just something that happened. But besides that, the rest of it really wasn't too bad. The rear, as daunting as it seems, really was rather straightforward. So if anybody's looking into doing it, it's great, it's easy. It made a big change in the ride height and how the different stance. Now the owner is planning on changing a few other things next. I think he would like to do some bigger tires and an off-road style bull bar type deal. So we're going to figure that out. So you may be seeing it again, we may not, who knows. But anyways, I just want to appreciate you guys' time for watching this. If you have any comments, questions, whatever, you know where to leave them down in the comments. And besides that, if you guys are interested in seeing more projects, just go ahead and drop a like, comment, subscribe, etc. The usual, as you guys know. So anyways, as always, thanks for watching Arsenal Garage, guys. Thanks for watching Arsenal Garage, guys, and you all have a great day. Peace out.